Today is going to be how to not go crazy working from home. It sounds like a really interesting one, and I think one that many people will be able to identify with.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, because I suppose a lot of people have been put in the kind of the uncertainty of working from home. Like maybe some employees already had that like ability essentially, but I think within very short notice, we were all kind of thrown into the deep end of working from home and navigating through like new challenges and things like that that potentially arose. So yeah, I've put together some tips, hints, and hopefully it'll help people not to go crazy working from home.
Okay, well, if you want to go ahead, so
Great.
thank you.
So I shared my screen. I was just wondering, can you see it?
Yes, we can see it. So
Oh,
if you just want to
perfect.
go up to the slideshow there, and
Yeah,
you'll be able to show the slideshow.
great. Perfect. I wanted to make sure. Well, brilliant. And thanks so much for having me today, Virtual Recruitment, Kevin, and Cormac as well from Jobs Expo Ireland. I really appreciate it. And look forward to helping you guys today, hopefully. So just to get started, a little bit about me. My name's Aisling from Healy Coaching. I have years of experience working in HR and recruitment on the corporate side, coaching managers and employees daily through various different aspects of working between career development, managing conflicts that might arise, and things like this, like helping like unforeseen circumstances of working from home and different bits and pieces like that. So I set up my coaching and consulting business a year ago, and I took it full time in June in the midst of a pandemic, working from home, and unexpectedly so as well. So just introducing, as I had just said with Kevin, I think a lot of us were thrown into the deep end back in March when we were told to go home and work from home for 2 weeks, and it ended up being months, and 9 months later here we are, and some people had the prospects of not working from home at all. Not going back into the office at all, sorry. So I put together some tips and different bits and pieces I covered just to help you through kind of this difficult time with challenges that arose that we never would have expected or forecasted, for example. So today I'll be discussing the following: challenges you may face working from home, how to overcome these challenges, and achieving work-life balance while working from home, which is really important and might be a lot that you're struggling with at the moment. So before we start, I'd like this session to be interactive as well. So don't be afraid to ask questions if you can. I think I can take questions here. And if you have any questions that you have, maybe at certain points, I'll ask you for your input. So I'm going to start with difficulties you may experience while working from home. So I like to highlight this just to each point that I cover. I will give you essentially the tips for overcoming these challenges that you might have. So if there are things that haven't been covered, don't be afraid to ask, or if there's any kind of other challenges that you had that weren't listed here, don't be afraid to ask as well. So a lot of you might find it difficult to work from home. So you're used to having a separate kind of work space and home life space essentially, and you were used to kind of going to the office, leaving everything in the office and then coming home, but all of a sudden you were kind of thrown into the deep end of working from home in many different environments. Some of you might have had experienced trouble like with childcare and having to manage children while working from home, which I can only imagine the challenges that arose from that. And as well, some of you might have had potentially, housemates that you're all that's why I picked this picture. You might be crowded around a desk and not having the space to take conference calls and different bits and pieces. So you really understand the challenge of finding it difficult to work from home in that sense. Workstation setup is really important, and a challenge that you may be facing, you might not even realize that you're facing at the moment either, in terms of like being scrunched over a laptop, which is really bad for your health, your physical health, and can have other issues as well. So like that, it's really important to address that issue and get your workstation set up right, have the ergonomic assessments, and make sure that you are operating correctly while working from home, because that can be difficult too. So some of you might find difficulties with work-life balance. So I cover this in the sense of either work-wise, where you might have had potentially, you're staying extra hours, you're logging on too long, people are expecting you to stay in longer than you would have whereas when you were in the office and you kind of switched off and came home. And the other side, life-wise, I had read an article recently of a guy who said that he used to be able to kind of come out and he struggled to get out of bed essentially, and he had that space of like the office and the time and to be in the office on time. He had that time to be there, but now he's going from essentially the bed to the kitchen potentially to set up. So he was finding that he was being late for work and just not being able to set those boundaries in place essentially. Technology issues, which is one really big one that I don't think a lot of potential managers and things like that see that you might experience. For example, like work systems, HR systems that are you can't log into if you have a problem. You used to be able to walk over to the IT or the technology department and get it resolved straight away, but now you're waiting for calls, you're logging calls, you're waiting for them to come back, and it's really hindering on like getting your work done within the working hours. So that can be a huge issue. Wi-Fi issues, which is really important. So when I was working in HR when we first started all work from home essentially, and a lot of people out in the country or remote side were having Wi-Fi issues that they didn't have the high-speed broadband. So like downloading worksheets or downloading Excel sheets like with finance and things like that, or even logging into those systems, they were finding difficult in terms of getting the speed that they needed to perform their work. So it was pretty stressful for them when they wanted to get the work complete essentially. Some of you might experience fear of asking questions. So this is one thing I noticed with employees, because you're so used to potentially going in and speaking face to face with people, like, oh, I have a question for the finance department, or I have a question for the IT department. You just walk over and talk to them. But it's more difficult when you have to keep picking up the phone. You might be afraid that you're bothering them essentially. But just to assure you, like, that's not the case. But it's very important in the sense of like how to overcome that challenge, because it's something that we wouldn't have had experienced before, and that lack of face-to-face communication can be really hard. Some of you might be experiencing loneliness, which is completely normal. So some of you might have had your social interactions by going into work and, speaking with your colleagues day to day, but now either you could be living at home on your own or any kind of situation, and you're experiencing loneliness then of kind of that separation and not, being able to connect essentially to your colleagues. So communication issues could be a real problem. And if you're sitting there thinking, yes, I can understand that you're either kind of left out of the loop, where, you're in the office before, you would hear things and you'd hear conversations going around. Now you might feel like you're completely left out of the loop on things, and that you're the last to know. So that's a very common difficulty that you're experiencing working from home. Exhaustion is a huge one also. So like that, you either might be struggling to switch off from, like working longer hours, or not being able to just separate. So you're working near your living space essentially, and then it's constantly reminding you of work. So that can be really stressful and really lead to exhaustion essentially. Some of you might feel like that you're experiencing poor time management, and in the sense that you might be used to meeting with your boss on a daily basis in the morning, getting your schedule, and then planning out your day for you essentially of what needs to be submitted at certain times and in certain time frames. So I completely understand there that you might feel like, I'm struggling now. How do I manage my time? I used to be able to get deadlines done on time, and now it's not working. So that's completely understandable as well. And lots of motivation out of the working environment. So a lot of us might be motivated by going into the office, speaking with colleagues, sitting down, speaking with managers, and that buzz and the atmosphere of in that work environment. You're focused, you're getting your work done. You tend to not have as many distractions essentially as you would have working from home, and the different factors. So that can be really understand that you're losing that motivation of working from home. It's like, how do I overcome that? So I'm going to go through overcoming then these remote working difficulties. So the first piece of advice that I would have for you is ensure that you are maintaining work-life balance. Now I go into a little bit more detail on work-life balance tips, and because it's one that I feel really passionate about and is so important in order to maintain good mental health and physical health and life balance. But it's important that you put the time aside and put in place the actions that I give you shortly into the work-life balance essentially. So another tip is remove the distractions that you have working from home, so it'll allow you to be productive within your working hours. So phones can be the worst distraction, social media, the fact that you have your television and Netflix just 2 minutes away, all of these distractions, so the ones that you can control essentially, can be really difficult. So try remove these distractions. Put your phone in another room if you're, hopefully that if you can separate your work and your personal phone, put it in another room. Don't try do these tests of don't go over to the television, don't look at Netflix. Remove anything that you can that potentially would be, maybe move your desk over to a wall if it's a distraction you looking out the window, for example. So actively working to remove distractions can really help you be productive within your working hours, so it'll stop you having to stay late. go for a walk at lunchtime or in the morning. So going for a walk is really important, and maintaining your working hours, as you would say if you were in the office. Excuse me. So if you were, for example, you had to walk to work as a commuter, walk to the DART station, keep that in place. Maybe do go for a quick walk in the morning. At lunchtime, if you took an hour stroll, or if you went out for a coffee or something like that, just try keep those breaks in place to help you, separate. I know that you're working from home, but it'll take breaks from being at home constantly. So really important is to speak with your manager if you are experiencing any difficulties. So this I can't stress enough. A lot of managers that I worked with have always said, look, I wish that the employees would just come to me sooner so that I can help them or put in place anything that they might need. So if you are experiencing any difficulties, make sure you do raise these with your manager so that they know and that they can help you. So for example, if you don't want or feel comfortable going to your manager, potentially you can go to like a HR rep or someone trusted or another manager in the company to try to help you through these difficulties, whether it's communication issues or if it's like your technology issues. There's just something just to explain if you're feeling the pressure that your manager thinks maybe you're not working or something like that. Just speak, be open, honest, open communication. That'll really help. So access EAP if necessary. So EAP is the Employee Assistance Programme. A lot and most companies have this programme in place. So if you're not sure of it, or if you're not sure you have it, just reach out to your HR rep or your manager and just ask, do you have this in place? So how it works is it's a completely separate service. It's completely confidential from the company and can offer different advice, and you can get counselling, and it's all confidential so that your company will never know that you access this information. So I really do recommend you use this. You might be able to speak to like a career coach or a life coach through these services depending on what they have. So definitely look into it, and they might have different tools as well available, like online yoga courses and different bits and pieces. So make sure you're checking that out. So another recommendation is to get dressed for work. So I know this might sound a bit funny, but it's all about a psychological and the transformation psychologically. So if you're getting dressed for work and then you're sitting down at your desk, if it's in the kitchen, for example, at least then you're saying, okay, look, I have the mindset, I'm ready for work. And then in the evening, you can get dressed as you would say for like home life. And that will help break the connection of, okay, I've been working all day, and kind of remove that kind of mentality and try split it essentially. So try and get dressed for work, get up in the morning as you would have, get dressed, and then start your day, and then take the walks and things like that as you need to. So keep your normal working hours. So if you worked, for example, 8:30 to 5, or if you worked 9 to 6, or whatever your working hours were, try as much as possible as keep to these working hours. So try log in at the same time. As I said, take the breaks and then log out, because it's really important to maintain, like this will help you kind of maintain and the remote working issues of staying in late and logging on. And if you set those boundaries and set those expectations with your colleagues and customers and managers as well, that look, I'm be working 9 to 5 as my working hours, I log out, because it's really important that you do that to get that time that you need for yourself. So organising virtual coffees with teammates can be a way to stay connected and overcome those communication issues as well. So like you would have, for example, say, oh, we'll go for a coffee today, or we'll go for a walk or go for lunch or something like that. Organise a virtual coffee instead with teammates, so that you're sitting down, you're still having those interactions, you're still building those connections. Granted, I know they're not the same as if you were face to face physically, but it definitely helps. It helps overcome, it helps you stay connected as part of the workplace, and just have that time, like completely, maybe try and have no work talk at all, and just say, how was your weekend? Although I know we're not doing much now at the moment, but it's good, and try keep to those times that you would have had essentially. So methods of communication. So I put this in because it's very important while you're remote working, as what might be different if you were speaking to people face to face. You don't have that anymore. So you don't have that kind of same interaction so what I'm referring to here is be careful of your emails, your instant messages, and your written communication, because your tone can definitely be misinterpreted. So I just highlighted here just to be careful of that, because it can contribute to misunderstandings. It can contribute to maybe potential conflict that's not really there. So if you have a question, or if it's a long interaction, or if it's a dialogue, make sure just to pick up the phone and give them a call, because breaking down those barriers of having those email communications is so important. So definitely methods of communication, just watch that. And it kind of goes back as well to, you know, the fear of asking questions. Don't be afraid. Like, speak with your manager, and your manager should set this preset as well of just being comfortable to have the chat, call them anytime. But if you're not finding that, you be the person to instigate that. You have the phone calls. You anytime that there's like potential a miscommunication and anything, make sure that you're picking up the phone. Virtual calls, conference calls, so important to ensure that you're, you know, watching your methods of communication just to not cause these conflicts that might happen. So be understanding of misunderstandings. So on from that, understand that there can be misunderstandings, particularly while remote working. And working from home and not being in the face-to-face environment. So if there is a misunderstanding, as much as we all don't like them, just be understanding and say, look, I can understand why it happened. We're all stressed at the moment. You know, people are going through a lot of different emotions and feelings at the moment in particular. So just be a bit more understanding that if it does arise, just say, look, I understand, let's talk through it, and let's get on a phone, let's get on the conference call again. So ask for regular one-to-ones with your manager. So this is important. So if your manager hasn't set one-to-ones, I would suggest asking for them. So this can help overcome the barriers of like communication, or the feeling of, you know, not being listened to or being left out, and, you know, those different barriers that you might have. So make sure that you ask for one-to-ones and say, look, I'd like to slot in weekly or bi-weekly one-to-ones with your manager, and address all of the concerns that you have, address the issues that you have, and like even just for a catch up and say, look, what's going on internally, what's the news, you know, just ask for those regular one-to-ones is so important. So ask for flexibility where needed. So this is really important as well. So if you are working from home and you're having issues with maybe childcare, and where you didn't have before, just ask for, is there a possibility I can change my working hours? So I worked with managers on this a lot, that people that were working from home, so parents, one person took a shift of say 9 to 5, and the other person took a shift of like 5 to 10 or 5 to 11 or something like that, because people will be understanding of your situation, you know, like especially now working from home, where it wasn't like the norm before. Just ask for the flexibility if it's possible. Look, and can you come towards some workaround, or can you take days off, or can you work weekends, and then you can kind of alternate it with your partner if it's something like that, working from for childcare or anything else, distractions or cares or anything like that. Just ask for the flexibility. Like, people are very understanding at this time usually. So set expectations then with your managers as well. So what I mean by here is, so if you feel like potentially you're afraid of what your manager is thinking of you, you're afraid that I have to stay logged in all the time because my manager won't think that I'm working, or this person won't think I'm working. In order to overcome that, set the expectations with your manager. So in your one-to-ones, or if you don't have one-to-ones, call them up and say, look, I want to set these expectations. Like, what do you expect of me? So how responsive do you expect me? So if your manager might not be communicating this to you, or they might already, but if they're not, it's important to reach out so that you aren't finding that difficulty essentially. So like that, ask, what are the expectations of me? How responsive do you want me to be? If you call me, like, when do you expect me to return the call? And then likewise, then you can say, look, sometimes I will be on a call if you're taking customer calls or whatever it might be. Say I might be in a call or in a meeting, like, will you be comfortable if I come back to you? If they're questioning your productivity, for example, say, look, over communication is key here when we're working from home and these remote working environments, because if they know, like, if you're saying, look, I am working on this, and like after a while, then you shouldn't need to update your dates constantly. But it's just like that, if you're having productivity issues, or if there's these unrealistic expectations, just set the expectations with your manager is really good. So I'm going to go through work-life balance here, and like why I believe it's so important. So the reasons for work-life balance being so important, and making sure that you're, I suppose, looking at it and addressing it and evaluating, is it prevents burnout. So if you keep going as you're going, trying to juggle work, or you're staying late, or you're not sticking to your working hours, or you're trying to juggle all of these life responsibilities as well, because that's a really important part of working from home and remote working, is to separate out your work and life responsibilities, because life is really busy. You're juggling so much. You're not, like, it's not just the work thing, it's your if you have children, like organizing them, or even your own life, like cooking, cleaning, exercising, you know, there's a lot to it. So Work-life balance is so important and it's key here, and it'll really help you with the remote working as well. So shutting off and making sure that you are maintaining that balance in order to prevent burnout from happening, because if you keep going as you're going, not fulfilling or running around trying to fulfill all of these tasks that are out of your scope, it won't work out, and it'll result in burnout eventually. So focusing on work-life balance as well removes that stress. So the stress of, oh, how am I going to juggle it all? I'm running everywhere. Even like, I know we're not going many places now at the moment, but there is still a lot of commitments like birthdays and virtual meetings and quizzes if they're still happening, because I know that we kind of burnt out of quizzes. So it removes the stress of trying to balance all of those priorities. It increases productivity, so not only in your work life, but also in your home life. So if you feel like productivity is slipping, it's because maybe you haven't focused on the work-life balance, and you're trying to juggle both at the same time, like life during working hours and vice versa. So when you do focus on it and put these boundaries in place that I'm going to suggest now in a minute, that can help increase your productivity in your working life and your home life as well. And it increases peacefulness. So that stress feeling potentially that you might have, or the anxiety of trying to juggle everything right now, particularly during this environment as well. Like, we're in lockdown at the moment, and there's added stresses to that as well. So some of us might think, oh, well, I'll just throw myself into work as a distraction. But if you do that, then you're not addressing the life issues that you have as well and your personal feelings. So it's important to address that for these reasons. So how to achieve work-life balance? So work within your working hours and switch off. So I know I might have addressed this a little bit, but this is it's so vital, and that's why I'm stressing it again. Work within your working hours, set your working hours, and make sure you switch off. So if you have work emails, if you have a work phone, like separate, put the work phone away when the time is up. Set those boundaries with people, and make sure that you're not kind of twisting in and saying, yeah, I would be available for that call. Particularly if you're working as well, in companies that have like US headquarters or international headquarters, and they start their day when you should be nearly finishing it. It's important to set those boundaries and say, look, I can't do that. Maybe I'll log in later then. Just to make sure that you're working within the working hours and you are switching off. If you have work emails on your personal phone as well, make sure you turn off notifications. It's just so important. Schedule work and life-related tasks for the next month and set your priorities. So what I mean by here is sit down with a planner and go through what is your work-related tasks for the next month. What are your priorities? What do you need to address? What are your life-related priorities? And what you need to make sure that you cover, whether it's dentist appointments or car insurance or all of those, or birthdays, as I said, and set the priorities of what needs to be done over the next month, and make sure that you're allocating the right time for each. So say if you think that, okay, I might need an hour off work to get this life-related task done, just set your priorities and make sure that they're clear in your head. Focus on one task at a time. So this is very important. When you are setting those priorities and you are working, focus on one task at a time, particularly when you're setting work tasks as well. So many times we can always write down, and I'm guilty of it too, we'll write down a list of things that we do, we'll target them one by one, and then you'll do maybe start one task and then move to the next task. And it's just not efficient. And then you end up at the end of the day saying, I have a bit of every task done, but I don't have it all complete. So focus one task at a time. So important. And tick it off when you have it done, because there's no greater satisfaction than ticking off a task when you've completed it, and pat yourself on the back as well as a job well done. And the same then with the life-related activities. Don't say if you have to catch up with 3 friends or 3 family members this week, don't put them all on the same night. Make sure that you're allocating the time appropriately. Know your peaks and troughs, and this will really help you with your work life and your life balance, essentially. So if you work better or are more productive in the morning, allocate your working tasks in the morning and say, look, I'll get all the hard tasks done in the morning, and then I'll be able to focus on the others, because I tend to drop in the evening, for example, or vice versa. If you're better in the evening, then work on the not so hard tasks in the morning to keep you motivated. Say, look, I'll get these kind of small wins done. But know your peaks and troughs and work to your advantage. And same like that in the life task as well. Get up a bit earlier in the morning if you feel like you'll be able to clean the apartment or the house or something like that. Or, work towards your strengths, essentially. Evaluate your workspace. So this is very important, and we had touched on it previously as well. So evaluate your workspace, and if you're working from home. So look, if you're working in an apartment, like a 1-bed apartment, for example, and your workspace has to be in your kitchen or your bedroom, for example, set up your workspace and make sure, honestly, that you have it. So I was guilty of this for the last few months. I worked over my laptop for the last number of months, and like scrunched over, I could start feeling pains and shoulders and things like that. And it was purely my own fault for not addressing it. So it is important. So what I did was I bought a laptop stand, I bought a keyboard and a mouse separately, and the difference that has made alone has been massive, and it's motivated me more as well, that I don't feel as like stressed, and that's kind of the stress stance that you take essentially when you do that. So and make sure you evaluate your workspace as well, and get the stands if you need to, get the mouse, get the keyboard, and make sure that you're working effectively as well from home. And sorry, one other thing in the workspace as well, if you are working in the kitchen like that, for example, then make sure that you pack away in the evening, for example. So take away all of your workstations and different bits and pieces if you are working at home, so that when you're there, you can switch off completely your like work life essentially balance, and then it's away, out of sight, out of mind, as they say. And the next thing is to plan your self-care time. So this is vital. You need to have time for yourself, and you need to plan it, because if you're anything like me, I'll keep going and then realize, oh, I didn't take any time out at all, and then you start feeling exhausted. So whether it is yoga in the morning, meditation, journaling, get up 15 minutes earlier, half an hour earlier, just to spend that time for yourself in the quiet of the morning, if you're a morning person. If not, schedule it for the evening, but just make sure you're taking that time out, even if it's going for a walk, whatever it is. Make sure that you plan time for you and you alone, that you need to switch off, and try to remove the devices and phones and things like that as well. Plan something every day that you really look forward to, so like that, whether it's a Netflix program or favorite food that you have, something like that, something that you really look forward to, so that you feel motivated during the day and like looking forward to getting through it, and for something that you look forward to. Don't be afraid to say no. So this is very important as well. Don't be afraid to say no if it's, say, like that, family members that are saying, can we have Zoom calls, can we have this, can we have that, and then you're starting to feel overwhelmed. Don't be afraid to say no and say, look, I can't, not today, schedule it for next week, and just give yourself that time to separate and achieve that work-life balance. So schedule in time for yourself as you would schedule in time for work, or as you would for a friend or something like that. So schedule that time in for yourself, say no where you have to, and set boundaries with work as well. I know that I keep pushing on that, but it's just so important in order to achieve work-life balance, not to go crazy from working from home. So don't be afraid to say no. Try journaling. So I'm a huge advocate of journaling, particularly in this time where it's quite stressful. So write down anything that's stressing you out, whether it's a piece of paper, a notebook, or whatever. It's only for your eyes only. So write down however you feel, address it. Is there a solution to this problem? If not, if there is, great, you can do it. If not, then you have to practice that acceptance and say, oh, it's out of my control, and I can't basically go on like that. So try that. I'm a huge advocate. Put in things that you're grateful for as well, so that you end it on a positive note, and positive affirmation saying, I am great at my job, or I will be successful, or whatever it is that's bothering you at the time. Evaluate your career as well. So is it something that you love? So that's very important too. So in order to achieve work-life balance, you have to be happy in your working time, which is 1/3 of your day essentially. So make sure that it is something that you love. Or look, the reality of it is we're not going to love everything about our jobs all the time, but you want to be achieving at least 80% to 90% satisfaction, and it can't be impacting you negatively essentially. Okay, set boundaries in work. So we've touched on that a good few times. Prioritize your health. So if you're not feeling well, or if you're feeling stressed, or if this, as much as mentally as it is physically, call in sick for work if you need to. If you need that day to kind of recoup and start feeling better. Your health really is your wealth at the end of the day. So make sure you're prioritizing your health too. Take the holidays that you need. So any annual leave that's owed to you, even though we can do nothing at the moment, take the holidays that you need, because you need that break. So you need that time to switch off from work. It's so important. And set goals in life and work. So small actionable steps. So if you know the path that you're going along, and you know the direction that you're going on, you'll be more motivated, you'll be able to achieve your work-life balance, and you'll be able to work towards something a bit more positively. So make sure you set goals in your life and work as well. I'm just finishing up now, sorry. So I know I'm going over time a little bit. So just to recap, it is challenging to work remotely. So give yourself a break. If you're feeling stressed, if you're feeling tired, if you're feeling anxious, give yourself that time that you need. It is challenging, and we mentioned the challenges and how to overcome that. So just make sure you spend time on that, on yourself, and understand that it is a challenge, and it's completely understandable that you are. You need to put specific measures in place, so boundaries, ask for help where needed, separate out your workspace, and focus on work-life balance, which is really important. So thank you so much for joining me today. I've put in my contact details. I have my social details there if you want to follow. So I share kind of work-life balance tips daily. I have an online course that I have up and coming as well that you can check out there. And I have my email address there. So if you have any kind of follow-up questions, or I will be in the stall as well after this webinar. So if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And thank you so much.
Okay, Aisling, thank you very much for that. That was very interesting. And we just see your contact details there, AishlingHealyCoaching.com. Yes. So thank you very much for that.
No problem. Sorry, I'll try stop sharing now. Oh yeah,
that's no problem.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
And if people want to have a chat with you this afternoon, will they be able to catch you in the expo itself?
Yes, yeah. I'm logging into the stall, back into the stall again. So if you have any questions at all, don't hesitate to reach out to me.